Welcome to The Aspiring Kryptonians, a podcast for Superman fans, hosted by Superman fans and focused around all things, you guessed it, Superman. After all, we are aspiring Kryptonians. From comics, TV, film and animation, each week we discuss our thoughts on the latest releases, news and even some retrospective reviews. So without further ado, let's get the show on the road. Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Aspiring Kryptonians podcast with me, Tasmin and Ashley.
Hi guys.
Sadly, Evan can't be with us today, but he'll be back next time for episode 19. So this week is dedicated to one specific comic book, which is Superman 78 issue 1, which is actually showing you just there. So first of all, we'll go into the ins and outs of the issue, issue number 1. So we'll tell you what we thought of it as usual, but then we're going to be talking to our very special guest about it, who is the writer of the comic book, Robert Venditti. So we recorded that a few days ago. I recorded that a few days ago. I had to go solo for that one. But yeah, we're excited to share it with you. And yeah, you let us in on a fair few little gems. So stay tuned. So we'll get straight into it and start with the comic itself. But please, if you haven't read it yet, please do not listen any further. Or maybe you can skip to the interview because we didn't put any spoilers in that. We made sure of it. So yeah, you can skip to that or just listen as a whole when you have read it. And if you are one of those people that haven't read it, you're missing out. It's very, very good. Superman 78 number 1, obviously written by Robert Venditti with art by Wilfredo Torres and colours by Jordi Belair. So Ashley, what did you think about this issue?
I absolutely loved it. Yeah? I just adored this thing. Yeah, it took me right back to, being a Brit, being 35, growing up in England. It was a staple. Superman 70, the original movie, was a staple of Saturday or Sunday afternoon television. It would always be on, repeats. And that was my first real exposure to Superman. Yeah. So to get this kind of gorgeous continuation of that story, that universe, I was excited. So when I got it, I read it for straight away. I had a big stack of comics. This was the first one I read, and I absolutely loved it. Just brilliant. It starts off with a beautiful little piece about Richard Donner as well.
Oh yeah, that was nice.
Tribute. That was absolutely gorgeous. The quote just already had me in tears. So I was already emotional going into this thing.
Yeah, I loved it as well. So this era of Superman wasn't my introduction to the character. So for me, I know a lot of people are very much Christopher Reeve is the only Superman. So for me, I didn't have that attachment to it, but I do still love it. And this pretty much took me straight back to the first time that I did watch it. But yeah, first of all, they got amazing covers, which I haven't got them with me at the moment, but I know there's one by Doc Shaner. There's the one by Wilfredo. I think there's 2 by Wilfredo Torres. There's a variant, which is like a sketch of all of his designs of Superman, which is pretty cool. And I cannot for the life of me remember the artist, but it's like a version of Jim Lee's issue 204 where Superman's leaning on the gargoyle.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? So it's like it's that version, but it's the Christopher Reeve Superman rather than the Superman that was on there originally, if that makes sense. But yeah, they're all great covers, and I've spent a small fortune buying each and every one of them, and I'll probably carry on doing that for the rest of them because they all look great as well.
They do. Yeah, I mean, I've got the regular issue in my hand, and it is really is just the spiritual kind of descendant of those movies. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. And the likenesses, it always astonishes me how these artists get the likenesses like this and continue it through the whole book. Incredible.
Yeah. So this one pretty much starts with, it's kind of like another retelling of the Destruction of Krypton, sort of following from the film, which was quite nice. I like the artwork there. So it was all it's all red, isn't it, if I remember?
Yeah. I mean, and Krypton as well just looks just like it did in the original movie, which has obviously changed and sort of developed over time. But it's nice to keep the simplicity of what it was back in the original film. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah. And then Brainiac is introduced. but yeah, like I say, the creative team, so Wilfredo Torres and Jordi Belair, they've pretty much captured the whole look and feel of the original film. Even sort of the dialogue in some parts, like the bit of Krypton where Jor-El's talking, the sort of dialogue between Lois and Clark, it's all exactly the same, which is, well, it's uncanny, really. But I don't know, I just love that, and it shows that it's like a clear continuation rather than just an addition to that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we live in an era of sort of reboots and sort of starting over again. This is what I've always loved the most, building what we already have. And there are so many franchises that try to sort of reboot and start again. Do this is the best, because you honor what's already there and you continue the legacy.
That's it. And you know what? I'd love to see a continuation of Superman Returns. I know there was a prequel comic series, but imagine a comic series addition to the story, because they kind of teased Superboy, didn't they? So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities there. So if anyone's
there's a lot of love for that film as well. There's a lot of love for that film as well. And Brandon Routh, I don't think the audience has ever really fallen out of love with him.
That's it.
Yeah. And with the exposure that he's been getting recently, like being on the Arrowverse and sort of like doing his turn as Kingdom Come Superman.
Yeah,
he's really shone a light on his movie and that particular period of time. So yeah, by all means, I would be down for that.
Yeah. So if any writers are listening and want an idea, it's free.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was quite nostalgic to see the characters in the comic, because like you said, they look exactly the same as their live action counterparts, even though this is obviously the comic version. And then obviously a lot of them sort of passed on, sadly, so it's quite emotional seeing them, because it's kind of like seeing, because their dialogue and everything and facial expressions are so similar, it's like seeing them back in action again.
I mean, the beginning of this issue, sort of like in Metropolis, Lois preoccupied as usual, and Clark is like stumbling behind her and trying to get her attention, and all she's thinking about is food and whatnot, and it is like they're alive again, and it's kind of somber but also a celebration as well.
Yeah, definitely. It also has the same sort of humor as the films as well. Like I think the bit with Perry White where he's sort of, I think he says, great stories don't just fall from the sky, and then as he says that, a meteor falls from the sky, literally, which I thought was quite good. So it's nice that Venditti has sort of paid homage to the humor as well, because the humor in a 70s film, well, even though sort of early 80s, I guess, but in that film is a lot different to what we get now. So it's nice to see that.
I mean, even with the purse snatcher, it's kind of like a it's a very whimsical way that he's been sort of like captured, or he's been sort of stopped or apprehended even. So I definitely know what you mean.
And some of the Clark where Clark changes to Superman moments, they feel like they've literally been pulled straight from the film. I think you were just talking about the same part, but where he's sort of running through the alleyway, it just looks exactly the same as the film. But I just can't get over how well it's been done. Like, it's not, I don't know, it's the same, but it's different. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, it's a complete natural successor.
Yeah,
for sure. I think in terms of sort of like the villain, like Brainiac is the villain in this piece. He seems like the sort of the natural progression. I think for a lot of people, for a lot of fans that we talk to, and sort of like when we're at conventions, we ask about who would you like to see as the next villain. Brainiac always seems to be the standout choice as a villain. I think even we've seen really nice renderings online of fans doing the Man of Steel 2 poster, and it's Brainiac's ship. So he's always the natural successor for me, and he just looks great in this thing.
He does look great in this. I think I've written a note somewhere further down about the way he looks in a second. But yeah, even one thing I did notice as I was going through the pages, even the building of the Daily Planet is exactly the same as it was in the film. And I actually went to see it in New York a few years ago when I went to Comic-Con. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, I've been there. But yeah, there's nice tributes in there as well. So obviously you have the characters and the actors and actresses being brought back to life. You've got the Richard Donner tribute at the beginning, like you were saying,
Yeah.
and then you've got sort of little influences in the comic as well. So there's Schuster Station, which I noticed, and then there's also a tribute to Robson Rocha at the end of the issue, who also sadly passed away this year. So in terms of the plot, so Superman and Lois are pretty much on their way to the Daily Planet, where Perry White has given Clark a bit of a pep talk in terms of his reporting, saying that he needs to get out there a little bit and bring some front page news. And then during that discussion, one of Brainiac's robots takes an attack on the city, and Superman swoops in to save the day, whilst Lois and Jimmy head towards the danger instead of away from the danger, just to get the story. My favorite part one of my favorite parts in this issue was when Superman introduces himself to Brainiac, where as he's fighting, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. I think because this is like a first issue, there's not too much plot wise. It's pretty much a setup, isn't it, for what's going to happen. So yeah, there's not too much to analyze in terms of the plot, because it's kind of straightforward. But yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it was a perfect #1 issue for me. I mean, I read it very quickly. I've given it about a couple of reads now, and yeah, it sets out the table lovely. You know, it reintroduces you to that world. Yeah. You'll probably know this more than I would. The Metropolis in the original movie, was that New York? Did they film that in New York, or because I know they filmed parts of it? I would think in London, some of the underground scenes. But yeah, it's just bringing me back, looking at the pages, and gorgeous.
Yeah, I think there's sort of bits filmed in different places, because I know they did some filming in Pinewood, which would have been the London scenes, like the underground, as you say, and then obviously New York for that Daily Planet building. So I think it's all over the shop. But yeah, it looks more like New York to me.
Yeah, for sure.
So the Brainiac robot then sort of originally analyzes the humans and declares them as not being a threat. And then he obviously comes into contact with Superman and quickly realizes that he's a Kryptonian and sends that data back to the mothership where Brainiac is, of course. So this was sort of a nice, steady introduction to Brainiac, I thought. For those that aren't really too familiar with him, it's just sort of an insight into the way that he thinks and works. And then for people that are familiar with the way he does work, it's a great tease for what's to come. But yeah, it kind of really set the scene. It reminded us of where our mindset needs to be in terms of the time periods and character representations, because 1978 was a long time ago. So actually it would be good if you watch those films, specifically Superman the movie 1 and 2, and then read this, because that's kind of the timeline that it's following, I think. But yeah, it's just perfectly reintroduced some beloved characters back into our lives, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Brainiac, he's a very old character, and, he's got a lot of history behind him, and I thought this was just a really nice, fresh, new reader-friendly take on him.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he kind of sends these drones out into the night, and they bring back all this information and sort of like, the different planets.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I'm just looking at these pages now, and they're fantastic. Really are.
I forgot to mention the way he looks. So he's obviously sort of styled from David Bowie, isn't he?
I did. Is that an insider kind of thing? I'm not too aware of that.
Well, I follow Wilfredo Torres on Instagram, and and Twitter, and he's posted quite a lot of all sort of the sketches and stuff, and said who they're based off. And then I think in the first issue, it doesn't look that much like David Bowie, but going forwards, I think he really does. Some of the panels that I've seen, you can tell straight away. So I like that because all the other characters are obviously based off existing people, obviously from the film. So it's nice that they've carried on that theme and you sort of cast it themselves, I guess.
That is absolutely fantastic. I mean, obviously David Bowie, the Starman. That's brilliant. I never knew that, but that is absolutely fantastic. I'm looking at him now on the final page, and yeah, I can start to see it.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I really like this issue, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the series. capturing the likeness of something so dear to Superman fans, I was a little bit worried about it at first. I knew it was in good hands with Venditti and Torres and Jordi Belair, but yeah, it didn't disappoint, and it didn't feel like, it kind of felt like a bit of a love letter to the films, but not in a soppy way. It wasn't cheesy, it wasn't overdone, it was just the right amount.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying in a lot of our recent podcasts, Superman right now, the books that are out there, they feel like events.
Yeah.
Big event pieces, and this feels like an event. This feels like a story that needs to be told. Like you said, it's a love letter and it's playing on people's nostalgia, but I do feel that there is a story that should be told.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see how it goes, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like I say, this is an event pretty much. It was supposed to be released digitally at first, and they kind of scrapped that idea and made it a physical release, which it was going to be a physical release later down the line, but I'm glad that they've kind of bypassed that and gone straight to it, because it just makes sense. And this, usually when you sort of share Superman news or reviews, you get the odd negative comment, which not necessarily negative, but someone will say, oh, I didn't particularly like this part, I didn't particularly like this, I don't like this Superman, blah blah blah. But when I shared the news that this series was the series was announced, people were going crazy. Even people that didn't read comics but like the Superman 78 film said they were going to pick this up, and I think that's kind of bringing in like not a new era, because obviously there are existing Superman fans, but comic readers.
Oh, I can definitely see a slew of, readers, new and old, going back on the films. I mean, I know for people like ourselves, they're constantly in the DVD player or what have you, or streaming. I definitely think that they're going to like shine a light on the old movies, and Christopher Reeve done a turn in Smallville as well.
Yeah,
a really nice turn in that. So hopefully, put some eyes back on that show. And yeah, Robert Venditti, as far as I'm concerned, is the man right now. I spoke to you, off camera about how his Man of Tomorrow series was the first Superman, first comics I'd read, new comics I'd read post-COVID, and it was so important to felt really important to me that I was reading new comics again, and I know what a trying time it was to get these comics out, and be it digital, I was so grateful. So I'm indebted to Robert Venditti. So when I saw him on this, I was just like,
yeah. Man of Tomorrow is like ridiculously good anyway. I think I don't think we've covered it on the podcast, because I think we started it after it was released. But in all the reviews that I've done, I've been singing my praises about it. I love the series, especially because there's quite a few creative teams on it, but I think Robert did 11 of the issues. I can't remember how many issues there were in total, but yeah, his story was a highlight from that series. And like I say, I'm glad they pushed it out to digital, because it was supposed to be those Walmart ones that, the comics that are exclusive to Walmart, which are really hard to get in the UK. So digital is good for us. I don't really have much else to say on the comic without spoiling too much, and I think we've kind of said enough about it, and I think people need to go and read it to make their own decision about it.
Kudos to DC for bringing this thing out, and tying it in a bit with the Batman 89 release as well.
Yes,
I think there's so much goodness in the DC pantheon to be mined and brought back to the surface. I mean, the Flash series, the TV show, of course, and there's so much more that I think they could go back on.
Yeah,
I'm excited. Exciting times.
They've kind of proved that it's not sort of all of these. Well, going back on these things like Batman, it's Batman 89, isn't it? I was going to say Batman.
Yes.
Batman 89, Superman 78. It's obviously known that they're very popular with the fans, so it's nice that they've gone back. And I think because I'm assuming this has been successful, because all I've seen about it is praises. I think maybe they should start thinking about doing it to other series. Like I said, Superman Returns. I'm sure there's thousands of other, like Lois and Clark would be a good one, because obviously there was a big sort of cliffhanger at the end of that. There's so many things, and I think they definitely did a Smallville one, which is Smallville season 11. I haven't read it.
That's right.
Well, I still haven't finished Smallville, actually. Still going. But yeah, I think it just proves that it works. It's a good idea, and it's not. If you do it, it doesn't necessarily mean you just copy and sort of look for ideas. It's like, this is, like I said, the same but different, because it's the same sort of era, same characters that we know and love, but it's a different story, and a story that makes sense to be told.
And there are so many talented artists out there that do capture likenesses so well. And, you know, for familiarity's sake, they can do a couple of issues where it's real sort of like, you know, really good likenesses, and then wean it away slightly, you know, to the point where it is an original kind of artist interpretation, but we've already got there and we've been weaned to it. So yeah, I'm all down for what you're talking about, for sure.
Well, I don't even think it needs to be exactly the same. I think as long as it sort of resembles them, and like especially the suit, I think that's quite important. If the suit looks the same, then I think you're fine.
Yeah, agreed.
But well, you've probably noticed that Evan isn't with us at the moment, so he's sadly not with us today. I say that like he's dead. He's not dead. He's fine.
He'll be back.
Yeah, he'll be back. But I still wanted to get his thoughts on Superman 78, and I wanted you guys to hear them because I know he's quite enthusiastic about this. So with that said, I asked him to record them for us prior to this recording, so I'll let Evan take it away.
Hey guys, sorry I couldn't be on the show live today, but here are my thoughts on Superman 78 #1. I think it's pretty cool that we're getting this series, because I just love it when comic books continue the continuity of something that's been canceled or too old to continue. Like when we had that Fleischer Superman story in Superman Red and Blue the other day. Yeah, so I really like. I think they nail the tone and the characters for sure. I love how Lois continues to just not be able to pay attention to Clark. Like she's trying, he's trying desperately to get her attention, but she can just barely acknowledge his presence, and she's like, huh. What? Oh yeah, Clark. And that's just something that's totally the Christopher Reeve movies, Lois Lane. I like how Metropolis is very grungy, just like 70s New York. And it's very reminiscent of the movies. And then one of the things I was very impressed with, and I was really hoping they would do, and I hope they continue to do this, is not only are they doing character likenesses, but they are also portraying the special effects, quote unquote, like they would if they were filmed in 1978. So we get a couple of shots where Superman is flying toward the camera or flying sideways, and it looks just like if Christopher Reeve was filmed on a rear projection screen like he was in the movies. And I love this, and I really hope they continue to do this, because it really makes it feel like we're getting a continuation of the films, and it's not just a story set in this universe. I really hope they continue to do this. The one area where I felt they fell short in this was Brainiac's drone, which just looks straight out of the normal comic books. And it would be interesting to know how they would portray that in 1978, because it's too skinny and wiry for a person to be in a costume portraying that. Maybe they would have used puppetry, maybe they would have used stop motion animation. So I'd be interested to hear the artist's thoughts on that, or if they just decided to say, forget it, we want this to look like a Brainiac robot, and we don't really care if it's looking like a 70s special effect or not. I will say that Brainiac himself does look like a unique design that I think they would have come up with in the 70s. I wonder if they'll pay any homage to the computer woman from Superman 3, because that was kind of like a pseudo Brainiac character, or the closest thing we got to a Brainiac character in the Christopher Reeve movies. Anyway, I'm excited to read more of this, and I really like it. I really like what they're doing with it. And a very interesting plot twist there on Krypton. Interested to see where that goes, too. All right, have a fun conversation. Bye.
So as I said, we spoke to Robert Venditti, the writer of this series, earlier this week. So without further ado, I'll play the interview that I did with him earlier this week, like I said, and enjoy. Okay, so hello and welcome to the Aspiring Kryptonians podcast, Robert. I guess it's the first time you've been with us on the show.
Yeah, it's been a while. Let's see. We talked for Man of Tomorrow, I think. It was about a year ago, but I think it was different then. It wasn't this. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us, because I'm sure you're very busy with all the stuff that's coming out, so we really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me on. Always good to talk to you.
So sadly, as I just mentioned previously, but there's just 1/3 of the team today, so you're stuck with me because Ashley and Evan couldn't make it, I'm afraid.
Okay, I'll meet them some other time, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll start off with the introductions, I guess. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah. Geez, I don't know. I live in Atlanta, outside Atlanta, Georgia, so things are a little wild here.
Yeah.
But I know you guys have had a rough time there as well. I moved since last time I talked to you. I think last time we talked, I was packing up my office, and now I'm unpacking my office. So you've been there for like the whole transition, but I've got stuff hung on the wall, but I haven't got everything like put away or anything yet.
Yeah.
So.
How's that going? Has it been stressful?
Yeah, I will never do it ever again.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm married and we have 2 kids.
Yeah.
And I hadn't moved in probably 15 years. And when we had moved last time, we had like 1 2-year-old, and that was it, you know. And you just don't realize how much stuff that you gather in that much time, you know. And so not only will I never do it again, but also I'm pretty belligerent now about what stays in the house. Like, you know, like, we're not just shoving this in the closet somewhere, because eventually it's going to become my problem again, you know.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
It changes a man, you know what I mean.
Yeah. I'm the opposite. I'm a hoarder, so I'm like, oh, we might need this one day, and then my partner's just like, get rid of it. But
I used to be that way.
Yeah. That's why I have so much stuff around me now. Yeah. But he's trying to get me to get rid of it, so that's not going to happen. Well, first of all, a huge congratulations on Superman 78. I've read it, of course, and I loved it. It felt like a real sort of love letter to the Donner films, but obviously also had its own fresh take on it in terms of the story and some of the characters that were introduced. I know we discussed this in our first interview, but as some people listening to this show might not have seen that or heard that, I just wanted to touch back upon your relationship and take on Superman, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So go ahead. Yeah. I thought you wanted to walk into it. Go ahead. If you got a question, go ahead.
I was going to say, have you always been a fan of Superman?
I have, yes. Superman, ever since I was a little kid, was always my favorite superhero, and really beyond that, one of my favorite characters in all of entertainment, you know, literature, any of those kinds of things. I didn't grow up reading comic books. I didn't start reading them until I was probably in my mid to late 20s. So that's not really based on whatever was happening in Superman comics at the time. It's based specifically on Superman 78, Superman 2, you know, the Richard Donner films. Yeah. For a lot of people, you know, they'll say the John Byrne era was their Superman, or the Dan Jurgens era was their Superman. The Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner era, that's my Superman. You know, that's what I grew up with. And I don't remember seeing Superman 78 in theaters as much, although I'm sure I did. I definitely remember one of my most vivid film memories of my whole life is watching Superman 2 in the theater and getting to the very end when Superman comes out of the particle chamber and he takes a knee before Zod. And in my little kid head, I didn't know what the world was going to do now, because Superman lost his powers.
Yeah.
You know, like, I believed all of it, you know. And then, you know, he crushes his hand and the music takes off. And if you could see me now, every time I tell the story, my hair stands on end, because I remember that feeling as a kid.
Yeah.
I totally had bought into it, you know, and it just, you know, the score swelled and everything. And to be able to do this book is just crazy, because
it must be a privilege for you.
Yeah. It's not anything that would make sense that would even happen. And I believe last time we talked, you asked me if I was working on anything else that was Superman related.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, but I couldn't tell you. But no, you asked me what else I was working on.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm working on something I can't tell you, but I think you'll be happy to know when they announce it. And this was the project.
Yeah. I think every sort of announcement that came through, where you were sort of, you and Superman were tagged into it, I commenting saying, "Is this the one you were talking about?"
Yeah, I was writing it at that same time.
Yeah. So it's
To
taken quite a while for that to sort of come to fruition, I guess, because
yeah,
this
yeah,
last year we talked about it.
yeah. There's a lot of lead time that can go into stuff sometimes, and so I'm trying to think when I wrapped all the scripts. I finished the last script in December of last year. By that time, Wilfredo Torres, who's the artist, was already working on it. He feels
Okay.
very much the same as I do
Yeah.
about the Donner films. He's just as passionate about it and feels just as strongly about it. And I really think that comes across in the art.
Yeah,
So
definitely
both
does.
of us all the time, we talk over email or in the scripts. I'll be like, I can't believe we're doing this. What I mean? It's crazy. Um, but yeah, so there was a decent amount of lead time on it, and you're going to have Wilfredo's going to draw all 6 issues, right? And so you want to make sure that the lead time is there, that the artist is going to have the time to do the work and do the way they want it to be done.
Yeah.
And there was also changes to pub plan a little bit. Originally it was going to be a digital first release.
Yeah.
And it changed to print, so that kind of adjusts, when it's going to come out and things like that as well. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm happy with it. I'd rather have more lead time than less.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, you don't want to rush a project, especially if you're so passionate about it as well. Did the fact that it was dealing with the film properties, did that affect the lead time in any way? Because I mean, usually with comics, they don't link into a film sort of continuity like this one does.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. It really is kind of an evergreen project. It's not really linked with anything else in the DCU or anything that they're doing on the film end or anything like that. It just took the time that it needed, to come out. I mean, Wilfredo's almost done with the whole thing now. So I think he's on the very last issue. So we've got almost all the art in, and Jordi Belair is doing a fantastic job on the covers, and Dave Langford in the letters. Like, the whole team really seems to be enjoying what we're doing. But no, I don't think that I wouldn't know. Some of that stuff maybe was behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But I would imagine all those ducks were in a row before they ever even greenlit me to start writing it, So I don't know if any of that was a holdup.
Yeah. Did the fact well, because obviously you said it was going to be a digital first to begin with. What was the reason that changed?
I don't know. I'd like to think they were just so excited about how this book and the Batman '89 book were turning out.
Yeah.
That they really wanted to make them print, but I can't really say, because the Batman '89 book is similar. The artist on that book has been wanting to draw a Batman '89 comic forever, and the writer of that book is the writer of the screenplay for the first 2 films, I believe.
Yeah.
So I think they just have been really happy with the quality and what. It's not a very easy needle to thread, right? Like, you have all the Superman stuff that you have to deal with, but this is like a very specific version of Superman that is probably the best known version of Superman. Like, you can go anywhere on the planet right now and people know Christopher Reeve Superman, So it's a very specific version of the character that you have to hit. And I'd like to think that they were really happy with how the books were turning out, and they decided to move them to print, but I can't say what the decision was for that. I could say I'm happy about it.
Yeah, I won't say I'm happy about it too, because it's one of those, it's like an event book, because it seems like it's been a long time coming, because obviously 1978 was a long time ago, and it just, I don't know, I'm just happy that they're sort of paying homage to, and you were paying homage to that era.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's just such a part of not just my film experience, but really like my childhood experience.
Yeah.
I really can't, it probably sounds hokey to say, but I really can't sort of explain how much Superman was a part of my life growing up, because he was a character. Well, I saw him as a person, but he was a person who just did the right thing because it was the right thing to do, when he could have done the wrong thing as much as he wanted, and nobody could have really done anything about it, And I don't know, that's just always the way I wanted the world to be, even as a young kid. And every generation grows up in their own dark times in certain ways, and my children are certainly growing up in this era, which is dark in a lot of ways. Definitely. But he was always so bright, and he always did the right thing. And I don't know, it's just how I always wanted the world to be. It's how I always wanted to be towards other people. And it was almost like seeing that film and the way Christopher Reeve personified it so much and didn't make it feel corny or hokey, you know. I mean, he was just devastatingly handsome, you know. He could have wielded that for ill all by itself, you know what I mean? But instead he's always doing the right thing. And I don't know, it just made me think like the way that I thought about things maybe wasn't so crazy, you know, because he's doing it, you know.
And he seemed like that kind of guy off screen as well, like all the pictures that you see and all the sort of fundraising that he did as well. So
yeah,
definitely not just on screen. He's definitely
I would hope so.
Yeah. So you said that you handed in the script in December last year for.
That was the last script. Yeah.
Yeah. When did the first sort of idea come about for this? When did you start thinking this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I'll try to remember. I want to say it was around June of last year. I had already been working on Man of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
And Andrew Marino, the editor who I worked with on Man of Tomorrow, which was originally going to be in the Giants that they were publishing through Walmart and other outlets here, it ended up moving to digital first after the first few issues came out because COVID shut down all the printers and DC was putting out their content only digitally for a little while. So it was when that was coming out still that Andrew approached me about doing this. And, you know, over the years, I've worked with Andrew on a lot of comics. He edited almost my entire Green Lantern run. I worked on Hawkman with him, a bunch of other things. At some point, us knowing each other all these years, I had talked about Superman 2 and, you know, me being a kid and all those things. And so he reached out to me about, pitching for it, would I like to write it? And I immediately had, the idea to bring in, actually, he wanted to use Brainiac,
Okay.
But I immediately had the idea of what I was going to do specifically with that villain and kind of what we were going to do with this story that, and when we get to the end of the 6 issues, people can judge. But I feel like it's not just a Superman story, but it's also true to what I reasonably believe would have happened in a film universe where you're presenting this to an audience and you aren't bound by decades of comic book continuity or any of these kinds of things. Like, what choices would they make with sort of that freedom to be able to do things differently that you could never do in the comics? And so
it's kind of like free reign there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I pitched my idea and he liked it, and my outline came together much easier than it normally does. It's not something that I ever sat around my whole career and was like, I hope I write Superman 78 one day. I would never think that project even existed, because it would have existed by now if it was going to exist. So I sit down and be like, what would I do with that? But as soon as he asked me about it, it just kind of all clicked, and the outline came very, very easily. And it just kind of rolled from there.
So 6 issues, well, obviously you're passionate about the films in that sort of era, so 6 issues is, well, it's a good number of issues, but it's not a lot in a way. So was it hard for you to sort of condense your ideas into that?
No, I mean, it's a format and a space that I'm accustomed to. I've worked in 6 issues pretty often in my career. A lot of times I've worked in 4 issues, so it wasn't, it feels to me when we get to the end, I don't feel like any of it was rushed or, it feels like a full film, you know what I mean? So no, I was okay with the format. Yeah. Okay. I hope they do more of them. But.
Yeah, me too. So with the art team, were they sort of already involved in the project when you came on, or did you sort of handpick them to do it?
I think Andrew approached me and approached the artist, approached Wilfredo at the same time, you know? But when I was putting my outline together, I didn't know for sure who the artist would be. But by the time I started writing, I did. And, Wilfredo had already sent, I think I knew it when I started writing. I remember very early on, Wilfredo had sent some of his just, character designs and different poses and, really trying to get the essence of those versions of the characters. And, when we get to issue 2, there's a beat where Clark and Lois are in her office, and he's trying to talk to her and she's chasing down a story and whatever. remember that I talked about this when you read it, like the way that Wilfredo is able to capture the specific body language that Christopher Reeve would use with the hunched shoulders and the leaning forward or whatever, like it really just brings it, because that was what made it so believable to me. I've never seen a Superman story or read a Superman story where I believe that anybody on planet Earth would be fooled that this guy wasn't Superman. You know what I'm saying? In the comics, or even like with Henry Cavill, like does anybody not see that guy come? Like, that guy looks a lot like Superman. But Christopher Reeve was really, with his acting, was able to make you believe that people wouldn't see it. And Wilfredo really is able to capture that a lot, which to me is the far harder part of Superman. It's not writing Superman and drawing Superman, it's writing Clark Kent and drawing Clark Kent.
Yeah, because I remember the scene in the film where he's sort of talking to Lois and he's hunched over with the glasses on, he takes them off and he just instantly shoots up like that.
Yeah, amazing. Just like a total transformation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what were Wilfredo and Jordi Belair like to work with?
Oh, they're amazing. Yeah, I worked with Jordi Belair before on some smaller things. This is my first time working with Wilfredo. He actually only lives like an hour from me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is like two dudes from Atlanta, like bringing you Superman 78, but he's a really good guy and obviously enormously talented. I love a style like Wilfredo's, and I think it's really good for a story like this.
Yeah.
There's all different styles out there, but I love how much he's able to capture with almost sort of a minimalist style, I mean, that's also very cool.
Yeah, every sort of character that comes up, even like Perry White, and I think Jimmy Olsen's only in it for sort of 1 or 2 panels in issue 1 anyway, and you can instantly recognize the actor that there's obviously it's supposed to be.
That's really cool. And the idea of sort of basing Brainiac on David Bowie, that was all Wilfredo, and I am a huge David Bowie. I just adore David Bowie, but it never even dawned on me, I don't know, you don't really write stories that way. Like I've never written, I don't know, 300 comic books I've written at this point. I've never like cast the comics as I've written them.
Yeah. But I suppose in this way, in this situation, it probably makes sense though, because obviously you've got a cast already. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I didn't have to cast this one either because a lot of the cast was already there. But it didn't even occur to me to cast Brainiac. That's just purely Wilfredo. And like when I saw it the first time, and I mean, I'm such a huge Bowie fan, not just because of the music, but sort of the way he presented his entire career is something that, again, I, not knowing it at the time, but I've tried to do my career in the same way that he has in some ways. I think Bowie copied me is what I'm saying. I always try to do something different with every project. I didn't ever want to feel like I'm giving somebody what they expected from the last thing I did. And I've always done that in my career. If you follow my books, I'm always trying to do something different up into and including Superman 78. And Bowie's very much like that. Each album that came out he completely reinvented himself. And so I've always been a huge admirer of his. And so when Will cast him as Bowie, I was just amazed, because the idea to me that I thought was cool, what I pitched to Andrew Marino in the beginning, was it'd be great if we could get like sort of both versions of Brainiac in here. Like we'll get like the robotic, skull brain version.
Yeah,
which would be cool and is very sort of 70s, I think, in its design. I think it looks kind of like what they might have done if they were to make a movie version of Brainiac. But then we'll just make that a drone, and then like the real Brainiac, which is the green-skinned, tall, aloof character, is sort of the person who's running the drone or whatever. And so to be able to put both those in the comic, again, it's like stuff that you're able to do that the freedom of a film setting would open up, that I think they would do that. I think that's something they might do, and so it's kind of the approach we took.
And it definitely had sort of the look of that era in those films. So was it sort of intentional for you to play on the nostalgic feeling with the book? Because there's some moments where like the dialogue sort of matches exactly from the film, the way that Lois is with Clark, where he's trying to talk to her and she's off doing something else. And obviously the look of the characters and even sort of the scenes and the settings are sort of reminiscent. Was that your intention to play on the nostalgic side?
Yeah, I never really think about nostalgia, because to me nostalgia kind of gets to a place where you maybe start alienating people, right? And
Yeah.
as somebody who didn't grow up reading comics, it was very daunting to walk into a shop and see, you know, these very high numbers and like, where's even my entry point? You know, they're being written for an audience that's been reading this for 30 years, you know. I always try to balance it. If you've been reading Green Lantern for 30 years and you read one of my Green Lantern stories, you're going to see things there that somebody who's new to it wouldn't have, and so
Yeah.
it plays to you in that regard. But if you've never read a Green Lantern comic in your life, you can pick it up and you can read it. And you can understand everything that's going on. You don't feel like you've missed anything. You know.
Yeah.
I think if you go in and just try to embrace nostalgia, you can alienate that new reader.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
This is the first time I've really worked on something where nostalgia even really would have been an option, right? Because Hawkman or Green Lantern or Exo-Man of War or any of the other stuff I worked on, I knew nothing about them before I started writing them. I had no nostalgia that I could draw from, you know. This I knew very, very well. I mean, I've watched, you know, aside from the amount of times I've seen Superman 2 in my own life, you know, I've watched it with my daughter when she was a certain age. I watched it with my son at a certain age. We watched it again when they were old, you know, like seen it a million times. So I could really stray into the nostalgia aspect of it if I wasn't careful.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most gratifying things I've seen when people have talked about it is if you are a fan of these movies from back in the day, you will see all the things that you remember and it really hits that nostalgia note. But if you've never seen those movies at all, you can pick this up and you understand everything that's going on, who the characters are, and it's a great Superman story. That's exactly what I try to hit with everything that I do. But as far as like the nostalgia and like the way the characters act towards each other and the conversations and things like that, I mean, really that's just leaning into this very specific universe in which those characters reside, you know.
I mean, there shouldn't be that many people that haven't seen the original Superman film. I think most people would have seen it, but yeah, there's always
but you still try, you know what I mean? And because again, I don't want to just do a nostalgia story. Like I really want to inhabit the universe. And so I guess what I would say is, you know, I wanted Lois and Clark to interact the way they do, and you know, the beat where the robot crashes down and the hot dog vendor squirts mustard on some or whatever. Like those films had those little gags in them and things. So I would try to say to myself, like, what's a little gag I could do right here that I could try to capture, you know. But that's me operating within the totality of that universe that's already been established, as opposed to me trying to play on any sort of nostalgia or anything like that, you know?
Yeah. Well, one of my questions was going to be, how many times did you watch the film for research purposes?
Yeah, I've been researching it my whole life, right? But I rewatched all 4 of them plus Helen Slater's Supergirl.
Oh, okay.
I watched them all like in 2 days before I started writing, just to refresh myself with some things. And you know, I wanted to make sure that the things that I wanted to do could be additive with that universe and wouldn't be contradicted by what had already happened. You know what I mean? So I wanted to make sure I really went through beat by beat and did all that. I had never seen the Supergirl movie.
Yeah. Do you know, I don't think I've seen it actually.
Yeah. I didn't really have to watch it, but I watched it just in case, because originally it was all supposed to be the same universe.
Yeah.
I didn't know if, you know, Clark showed up in it or something, you know. I had no memory of seeing Superman 4 at all. But once I watched it, I did remember the scene where he fights like the bad version of himself in the junkyard. I didn't remember anything else about the movie. I just remembered that. So I must have seen it somehow, some way. I don't recall. Superman 3, I remembered very, very vaguely. I remembered the robot when the woman at the end gets kind of cut and caught in the machine and that whatever. Other than that, I didn't remember anything about that movie either. So really Superman 78, the first one, and Superman 2 are where most of what I've done has been drawn from. And when I think about writing the story, we don't ever say this definitively, and I wouldn't want anybody to think that a lot of people try to pin down the continuity of it, and they ask me online, you know, when is this taking place? You know, in my mental space, it took place after Superman 2 and before Superman 3.
Okay.
But I don't know that there's anything that happens in it that would say it couldn't have happened somewhere else. You know,
I know what you mean. So what were the key elements from those films that you wanted to make sure that you included in the series? Because obviously, you know, you got the dialogue and some of the gags. Is there anything else?
just the spirit of it, the overall tonality of it, the idea that, you'll believe a man could fly, I really wanted to capture that sort of feel of it,
Yeah.
and not take it so serious, I mean, I not to wade into, one of the most divisive debates of our time, you know what I'm saying? But like, I wasn't as big of a fan of the more recent Superman things because it just seemed overly dark to me.
Yeah.
And I understand the world is a dark place, and we go through dark times, and there's other films that Zack Snyder has made that I did like.
Yeah.
Um, but I just felt like they were too dark for Superman. They were great tonality for a Batman character, but not as much to me for a Superman character, because the whole thing about Superman is no matter how dark the times, he's always bright.
Yeah.
He never gets darkened. And I don't put that just to the films. I think it happens a lot in other interpretations of the characters where there's evil versions of them for various reasons.
Yeah, there's quite a few sort of evil Superman takes in film and comics.
Like an enormous number.
Loads of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, all kinds of places. I don't know. I don't understand that impulse. Like as for me as a writer, and this isn't me saying they're bad stories,
Yeah.
or those aren't valid artistic choices. Of course they are. We're just talking aesthetics here.
Yeah.
For me, the whole point of the character is that the character never dims. The darker the world gets around him, the brighter he would shine, just like a flashlight in the dark, right? So I really wanted to strike that. The most important thing I wanted to strike was that balance of, this is a character who does what's right even though he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And it never feels corny or unbelievable. You never roll your eyes and be like, nobody would ever do that. You really believe the earnestness coming from Superman when you watch those films.
Yeah.
And I really wanted the reader to feel that same earnestness. And other than that, I would say the one thing I did that I wrote when I wrote this specifically that I would have done as writing as a comic is I was very sparing throughout in the use of certain effects, or in places like at the end of on page 10 of the first issue when you get the S moment and,
Yeah.
and Superman flies for the first time. If I was writing that as a comic, I would have had him say something when he was flying. But when you watch the films, he never speaks. It's because you're listening to the score. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I left all those parts blank because I wanted, if you have seen the films, I wanted you to be like, here's where the score starts.
Yeah.
And I have had quite a lot of people also say to us, I can hear the music as I'm reading this,
Yeah.
and that's probably more than anything. Because that's not only just something that, to me, that music means so much, but the idea that you would read a comic and you would hear something is a pretty neat trick.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Yeah. So I really wanted to be like, can we pull this off? Can we make it look like these pages are blank because you're playing the music in your head? And to the extent that people have had that experience reading it, that's a huge achievement for me.
Yeah, that's good. So obviously these characters and takes on Superman like Christopher Reeve, they're obviously cherished among Superman and superhero fans around the world. Did you think that there was a lot of pressure taken on those sort of already established characters in that era of Superman?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the case even if it wasn't a film. Whenever you're dealing with Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, whatever, there's going to be people who come out and hate your guts. That hasn't happened yet with Superman 78. That's not saying it's not gonna. By this point in Green Lantern, I definitely have people who hated my guts. There's no doubt about that. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure that comes with those things. But I mean, that's the job, right? Like I'd rather do it and face the pressure and even fail than to be. Can you imagine somebody asked me to write Superman 78 and I took a pass on
no.
it? Can you imagine?
I know.
I can't face myself for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It's just, it's impossible. So yeah, you are aware of those things, but you kind of just have to write from your heart, and they always say write what you know. You know what I mean?
And you obviously knew it because you watched it a million times.
Right, but it's true. Like write from your own life experiences and the things you've done. And I don't know, this is me writing for myself maybe more than any other superhero comic I've ever done, because it really is sort of that approach to that worldview that I really try to embrace. And another thing I'll say about that, everybody always says Superman can't work. He's too much of a Boy Scout or
Yeah.
whatever. The world's too dark now or whatever. And I find that funny because for a long time, well, not too long, hasn't been around that long, but for quite a while now, people have been saying to me, "Have you seen Ted Lasso?" And I'm like, I don't have Apple TV. I haven't seen Ted Lasso. Something ended up happening 2 or 3 weeks ago, about a month ago, with Apple TV, and we ended up getting it for some reason. So I'm all caught up on Ted Lasso, right?
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah. So I loved it. But the thing that was amazing to me, and when you watch it, maybe you'll think the same thing. Like Ted Lasso was this person he's an American football coach from the Midwest, American football, not what we would call soccer, right?
Yeah.
And they hire him to go be a football coach, English football, what we would call soccer, for a team in I can't remember where it is, but it's in England.
Yeah.
And he's like this guy who's very sort of aw shucks, and he has all these, witticisms that he says, and he's always doing the right thing by people, regardless of it's to his own benefit or not. And a lot of times it's very explicitly not to his own benefit, but he'll always choose what to help that other person regardless. He's even from Kansas. You know what I'm saying? It's like the entire world has embraced Ted Lasso, and nobody's like, it's corny, nobody believes it, it'll never work, And literally he's like the sports coach version of Superman. So it's amazing to me how nobody thinks that Superman can work. Like, of course Superman can work. Superman has always worked,
After 80 years, I mean, you can't really argue with that.
Yeah, I don't understand that mentality, but I think sometimes that's what we run into.
Yeah, I've had countless arguments with people, mostly my stepdad, because he's a Batman fan. He's like, "Oh, Superman's boring," and we've had many arguments between us about who's best.
I'm not a Batman. Like, I have no interest in writing Batman. The character doesn't resonate with me, but I don't dislike Batman. It's obviously a hugely successful, very popular character. It's not to my taste. There are some amazing Batman stories I've read that just totally blew my mind, but it's not a character that I feel like I can inhabit the headspace to write Batman, So I have nothing against Batman fans, but to me, what I always liked about Superman was how aspirational he was. And I think that embraces a lot of the DCU in a lot of ways. Like, I was always drawn more to DC characters as a child than Marvel characters because of the aspirational nature of Green Lantern or Flash or Superman or Wonder Woman, right? As opposed to a character that's kind of down in the muck, living like I do, but they also have superpowers and trying to make rent. Like, that didn't interest me. Like, my parents are already trying to make rent. I know what that looks like,
You want to see something different.
Beyond that,
Yeah. So are there any other characters from that era that you're going to sort of feature in this series? So Lex Luthor has been teased at the very end of issue 1. So are we going to see Miss Tessmacher and Otis at all?
No Otis. Lex shows up in issue 2 because, again, I'm writing in my headspace, I was writing from after Superman 2, where poor Otis got left behind in prison.
Oh,
and whatever you want to say about Otis doesn't really strike me as the prison break mastermind.
Very true.
So I don't have Otis. There will be some other little tidbits here and there, and if we're definitely planting some seeds, and if there end up being more Superman 78 stories, I've already talked about it with the editor. I know what the very next story would be. So those things are there, but I would say of what's still going to show up back in the series, you've got Lex and then a couple of other surprises too.
Okay, cool. So we've touched on it already a little bit before, but how have you found the response to the first issue? Has it been overwhelming?
Yeah, I mean, I'm overjoyed by it. People really, kind of the reviews and the response, again, people saying that they hear the music when they read it, or just being happy with it. People saying that they love the movies, but even if they didn't love the movies, you can understand it. But also, I think one of my favorite things that people have said is, what a time to have a story like this in the world, because things are so hard and so dark right now. And I don't know, things can be really grim, so I'm very glad to have people say those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I don't believe that anything I do is ever going to make some big change in the world or something like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know a lot of writers who do believe that, but I don't know, to the extent that maybe it can take somebody out of the darkness for the 20 minutes it takes them to read it and give them something positive, that's the most I can ask,
Yeah, well, you've definitely made people happy, because whenever I post a review, about other issues, not Superman 78, but other Superman comics, there's always someone that says something negative, and they just don't want to. They haven't read it. They just don't want to read it because they don't like the particular writer or what they've done with a particular character, kind of thing. And when I shared the news that the series was announced, the reaction was amazing. All the people that don't read comics said they were going to pick up the comic because they were big fans of the Christopher Reeve era and stuff like that.
Yeah, there was a reviewer who sent me a link to his video that he did, who's somewhere in the UK. I wish I could remember, because you might even know the store.
Oh, maybe.
He went back to the store where he went with his dad and bought his first comics when he was a kid, after he saw Superman 78. And he shot a video in that store talking about this comic book now, and how much he enjoyed it and what it reminded him of, and and I don't know, that's just amazing. I didn't grow up around writers, in my family. There was nobody that was in the arts. It was a very blue collar family, a lot of construction workers, and just hourly, 9 to 5 people, so the idea that I would ever get up and write anything when I was older and that it would be printed is already just a dumb thing. Like, that's not going to happen. That will never happen.
Yeah.
To be able to do the career that I've done and to be able to work the things I've done, but able to get to a moment like this where I'm working on a project like this, and to have that kind of reach where someone in the UK, I'm talking to you and you live in the UK, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've never been to the UK, I never left America until I was in my 30s, I think, you know what I'm saying? So growing up where I grew up and never leaving the state of Florida or anything like that, to think that you write something and it shows up all over the world it's just beyond, and as hard as writing can be, and it's a very difficult job, you do have to take those moments where you just kind of sit back and just, I can't believe that these things are happening.
So. And so going back to Man of Tomorrow, so you said they were supposed to come out in the Walmart issues. So in the UK, we don't get those, or they're really hard to get, and you have to get them from America, and they're obviously 10 times more expensive than they're supposed to be. So for us, we were kind of glad that it came to digital first, because we were able to read it quite easily.
Yeah, and they made a book of them now too.
Yeah.
They put, I think there was 17 of them all together, and I did 11.
Yeah.
But the first book is my 11, and I guess there'll be another book that has the other ones in it.
Yeah. Well, the other ones were kind of just sort of standalone stories, so it makes sense that they put yours together. And
yeah, I tried to make mine be very standalone too, and then throw in a 2-parter every now and then.
Yeah. Well, I threw some the opportunity for some of the listeners to ask you questions as well when I announced that you were going to be on the show. So we've got a few, if that's okay. Yeah. So Tons of Evil on Twitter would like to know who your favorite Superman villain is.
Favorite Superman villain in the comics, in the films, it's definitely Lex, right? Like Gene Hackman, I love Gene Hackman anyways, so many great films. In the comics, it wouldn't be Brainiac.
No?
No, it would be maybe Metallo.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe Parasite,
I like Parasite.
Or Batman. Like, I'd like him to give Batman just one good clean one,
Yeah.
But, no, I would say probably Metallo or Parasite. Yeah.
So when obviously you said Andrew sort of came up with the idea to use Brainiac, was it hard for you to get in the headspace to write Brainiac? Because is he not one of your favorite villains?
I don't believe I've ever written Brainiac before. Yeah. No, I haven't. I kind of did a fake version of Brainiac and Green Lantern, but it wasn't, the Brainiac that we have now. Yeah. I didn't know at the time, a lot of people have asked me, is this, the the film version that you're basing it on, or the Donner cut, or they can really get deep in the weeds on all this. I've not even seen the Donner cuts. I've just seen the versions of the film that I've seen,
Yeah.
And I wasn't aware, of all this sort of mythology surrounding those films, that he was working his way towards Brainiac. I had no idea that
I didn't know that either.
Donner was doing that. Yeah, supposedly, if he had done Superman 3, he was going to do Brainiac. I don't know what he was going to do, but that's what a lot of people online say.
Yeah, I suppose the robot thing in Superman 3 is kind of similar to.
Maybe, yeah.
I suppose so.
So I don't know if Andrew picked Brainiac because he knew that already the Donnerverse, that's sort of this great unfulfilled promise of the Donnerverse, or if he just picked Brainiac because Brainiac is such a high-profile villain that's never been on film at all, right? So I'm not exactly sure what the opportunity was there, or he just likes Brainiac. But I was happy. I like writing cosmic characters. The reason why Brainiac I think can be kind of hard, and I would say like he's a more difficult character. And I didn't write Brainiac at all in the 11 stories I did for Man of Tomorrow. One, Brainiac is really overused. Like you see Brainiac all the time. But two, it takes Superman away. It takes him out into space and then removes him from a lot of the things that are such a huge part of who Superman is. Like Lois isn't going out into space, and the Daily Planet isn't going out into space. So you kind of remove yourselves from the Clark Kent side of the character, and it's just as much Clark Kent as it is Superman. So you kind of got to have that balance. Like Green Lantern, he can live out in space. And Carol is out in space, and all his buddies are out in space. You can kind of do everything out there, but not so much with Superman.
Yeah. And Ryan, aka Burrito Bushido on Twitter, would like to know if you have any plans to introduce any 1978 versions of Superman supporting cast, like Supergirl, Connor Kent, Steel, or Professor Hamilton, those kind of characters.
I can't say.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say. I mean, I know the answer to that, but I don't want to say.
No, that's fair enough. You don't want to spoil it. And he also asked if there was ever a potential for a Superman 78 and Batman 89 crossover, even though there's sort of 11 years between the two.
Yeah, no, I would love it. I would love it. I've already said that if these books are really successful to do a crossover, I would love to write it. And why not even bring in Wonder Woman as well? But I would love to. But there's no plans for any of that stuff right now. At least not that I'm aware of. Somebody else might already be writing it now.
Or they're going to throw it on you at the end. And some questions from Evan and Ashley, because obviously they couldn't be here. So Evan asked, how do you approach writing Superman as opposed to other characters like Green Lantern?
I think with Superman, you really have to lean into the supporting cast a lot more, and you have to be careful to make sure you're grounding Superman.
Yeah.
Like my whole Green Lantern run took place almost exclusively in space, but Superman, because the character is so powerful and really kind of invulnerable in almost every way, you have to ground them to have any vulnerability for the character. What I mean? So like when I did the Man of Tomorrow stories, I tried to always make sure I had Daily Planet scenes, but even try to introduce little elements like he's always ruining his clothes, and Lois is always like, man, you keep ruining your clothes, and we got a clothes budget here, and it's not just about him ruining his clothes. It's about the idea that this is the most powerful person on the planet, but he has a clothes budget he has to live in because he doesn't use his power to make money, which he certainly could, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like to try to ground those characters in those certain ways. I think that's something you have to be really mindful of. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, pretty much. So he also asked, Dan Jurgens followed your run on Green Lantern and introduced Superman villains like Zod, the Eradicator, and Hank Henshaw. Did you follow that series? And if so, what did you think about the crossover of characters?
I'm trying to remember. I think Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps ended with my last issue, and that was the end of it.
Well, I can't comment. I haven't read it, admittedly.
I did Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, and I ended that series. There was another series called Green Lanterns that was and Dan Jurgens wrote Green Lanterns, but that was something he picked up from Sam Humphries and other characters. So yeah, I think that the end of Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps was the end of. I think I'm the only person to ever write that. But to speak to Dan Jurgens specifically, I mean, legend. And
Yeah.
I've really got to know Dan pretty well on a personal level over the years that I worked at DC and he was there. And, you know, we'd be at a retreat or whatever, and we'd get breakfast or go to lunch or something like that. And just has absolutely no reason to be a decent person. You know, like one of the true titans of the industry. His stuff is, you know, it's on TV, it's in the films, it's everywhere. He created all these things. You know, he really has achieved that level of his work has gone beyond him and will do so.
Yeah.
Till there are no more comics.
Definitely.
But yeah, he's just the nicest guy in the world. And you sit down and you talk to him, and he's just a regular person. You have conversations with him about comics or about anything else. You know, like I really appreciate Dan as a person, you know, even more so than as a creator.
Yeah.
And I think one of the, I don't know, something that I always take a lot of pride in, I guess, is that I've been able to meet people like that in my career, and to be able to have, you know, friendships with them. That's nice, because they're people that you look up to, and they're decent people, and you hope that you get 10% in your career of what they've got, you know, but they're still so good and so decent about all of it, you know?
Yeah. So, well, without spoiling it, of course, is there anything that you can tell us in terms of what's to come in Superman 78?
Probably not. Yeah, everything that I would tell you would be a spoiler. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm very excited about. I'll talk about it in the abstract, you know. The open of the second issue, we open with Lex Luthor.
Okay.
And I was so happy to be able to work with that version of the character. And, you know, what we're able to do with Lex in the next issue and our approach to the character, I think, is something I take a lot of pride in. Just really capturing the essence of who that version of the character was on screen. The first 2 pages of the next issue, this one of those moments where I can remember having so much joy writing those 2 pages. But beyond that, like, I wouldn't want to get into any sort of plot detail things. We've got some big twists coming. So
okay. Well, I'm excited to read it. What's next for you then? So after Superman 78, is there anything sort of in the pipeline that you can tell us about?
Yes, I do have another project I'm working on at DC that I can't talk about, but you might. Then I'll give you the same teaser I gave you last time. You know, it might be one you're interested in.
Oh, okay.
I hope they're doing more Superman 78 stuff. I don't know if they've made that decision yet.
Yeah,
I'm working on quite a number of things for Bad Idea. I don't know if you're familiar with that company, but it's a new publishing company that started up here this past year. So I'm doing quite a number of projects with them.
Okay.
And then I've got some other things that I can't talk about either, but I got a creator-owned thing I'm working on. So yeah, there's a lot of things coming.
Yeah. Well, you said you hope that there's more Superman 78. Does that mean that you've got ideas already for other?
Yeah, I already talked to Andrew and told him if we do another one,
okay,
this is what the second story would be, the second 6 issues.
Yeah.
This is what it would be. This is how we would capture it, you know, and fit it in with the tonality and the voice of what these films are, and also that era, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I already know exactly what we'll do. It's just a matter of if they decide that they want to do them. You know?
Well, fingers crossed. I hope it happens.
Me too. Yeah.
Well, thank you again for taking the time to be on the podcast. It means a lot, and it's been an absolute pleasure to talk Superman again with you.
No problem. I'm always happy to do it. So if you ever want to have me back on, just let me know.
Yeah, well, maybe sort of towards the end of Superman 78, so we can talk about
that'd be
in
great.
detail.
We could do like a post, and I could answer a lot of the questions I couldn't answer.
Yeah, there we go. And we can tell you what we thought of the series.
Only if it's good. If it's bad, I don't want to know. You keep it to yourself.
Yeah. I'll write a note. But yeah, we're really looking forward to reading the rest of the series. Issue 1 was amazing. For those that haven't read it yet, you're seriously missing out, especially if you're a Superman fan. So it's out now, and it's obviously available at your local comic shop or online at Comixology.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time again. And yeah, we'll speak to you sort of at the end of the series once we can talk about all the spoilers in detail.
Sounds good.
As usual, a huge thanks to our patrons from the House of Our, Dave Owen and David Beasley. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world to us and allows us to keep this show going. Not only that, but it sort of gives us more drive to talk about the things that we love with you guys. So once again, thank you. And thank you guys. A huge thank you to you guys for taking the time to listen. And we'll see you next time with Evan for episode 19.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to this episode and previous episodes in the podcast if you have done so. Remember, if you're enjoying the show so far, please do subscribe, share the podcast with a friend, and most importantly, leave us a review. It's those reviews that really help with our visibility and success, and it only takes you a few moments to leave one. As well as that, if you want to find out more about us, head over to our website www.theaspiringkryptonian.com, and if you want to follow us individually on social media, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube, so I'll drop those links in the episode description so you can get to know us a little bit better. A very quick shout out to some other very good Superman related podcasts and accounts that we love. The Last Sons of Krypton podcast, the Krypton Report podcast, and Adam Talking Superman over on Twitter. They have some really great Superman-centric discussions and are always dropping great Superman knowledge, so if you are looking for something similar to our show and our account, please be sure to check them out.